Okay, please create a new notes page that's on the right side called Part 1, Social Solutions with Today's Date. After completing the notes, pull out the need to knows, and you should have one need to know for every uppercase letter. So this is called Social Solutions Part 1, and it focuses on population really, because with immigration and an increase in population came overcrowded cities and the problems that arose from that. We will do this next time we meet in class, go through this data activity. So Roman numeral 1, solutions to immigration. We don't want to see immigration as a problem, because it's not a problem, but there were problems that arose because of a population increase. So solutions to immigration, but you're going to see that some of these solutions are questionable, or at least you might question them, because they were really restrictions on immigration. So A, restricting immigration. As of 1800, that's when the country's pretty young still, immigrants can apply for citizenship after 5 years of residency. So the country's growing and they're encouraging immigration. So all the way up through the Civil War, it's not that difficult for a person to become a resident in the United States, unless of course you are enslaved or a Native American. But for a lot of immigrants, it was not that challenging. But that changes in 1882. The Chinese Exclusion Act is made. And this was a response to the increased numbers of Chinese immigrants coming into the country, especially after the gold rush. So it banned immigration of Chinese people for 10 years. And it was extended again in 1892, again in 1902, and all the way up until 1943, this law was in place. And it was a racist law. It simply banned people from entering the country because of their race. Other restrictions. These restrictions were also being put in place during the Progressive Era through a series of laws that were made. And most of these laws made by Congress focused on restricting the amount of undesirable immigrants. And we put that in quotes because who knows what that means, but in simple terms, examples would be criminals, prostitutes, would be restricted from coming into the United States. And that restriction process happened on Ellis Island. And Ellis Island was opened in 1892. That's in New York City. And it screened immigrants coming into the country so they could determine who these undesirables were. Uppercase D, Gentleman's Agreement of 1907. So the agreement was between Japan and the United States. Teddy Roosevelt was the president at the time, and he agrees to fight against discrimination that is happening against Japanese workers and Japanese school children in the United States. So he says, I'm going to try to eliminate discrimination towards Japanese people in the United States. At the same time, though, Japan agrees to restrict the number of agricultural workers coming to the United States. And agricultural workers would be, for lack of a better word, the poor Japanese immigrants that were coming in. Japan agrees to restrict that. So that's a gentleman's agreement. Uppercase E, the 1917 Immigration Act. So this restricted the immigration of undesirables from other countries. It had a citizenship test. Those with contagious diseases were not allowed into the country. Those likely to become wards of the state, like women and children, in other words, they'd have to be supported by the government. Tax on immigrants entering the country is raised, so it becomes more expensive in order to immigrate to the United States. Knowledge of English becomes a requirement. That's going to eliminate a lot of potential immigrants coming in. And no immigration from Asiatic zone. So once again, we see the United States pinpointing people from Asia and not wanting immigration from those countries. So Immigration Act of 1924 is also called the National Origins Act. And this places quotas on the number of immigrants allowed into the United States from other countries. And it said that 2% of an existing population in the United States was allowed to come in the U.S. from each country, and I believe that was every year. So for example, if there were 100 people from Trinidad living in the United States, 2 people would be allowed in each year. And this was based on the census as of 1890. So they took the 1890 census is what they used to set the bar for how many immigrants were living in the country in order to set up the quotas. And it bars immigration from Asia, including Japan this time. So this 2%, we're going to take a look at some data to see which countries had the more immigrants coming in or were allowing more immigration from versus others, because as we can see here, once again, Asia is barred. Okay, Roman numeral 2, solutions to rapid urbanization. So Hull House, and this is a picture of Hull House. So immigrants don't have access to a lot of things: food, homes, education. So the Hull House was a settlement house, as they were called, and it was made in 1889. And it offered education and food and necessities and housing to help new immigrants new to the country. Jane Addams and Ellen Gates Starr were the founders of Hull House. And then we have Roman numeral 2. This should actually be Roman numeral 3, and that's solutions to child labor. And child labor leads to a cycle of poverty for children, because these children, for example, would be working instead of going to school, and as a result, they would grow up and not have any opportunities open to them because they weren't attending school, and as a result become unskilled workers, and then their children would do the same, and hence the cycle goes on and on. The Keating-Owen Act was made in 1916, and this banned the sale of products from any business that employed children. So it seemed like a really good idea. However, the law was found unconstitutional because it was dealing with business being conducted from state to state. So there was a loophole in the law. Even though it seemed like a good idea because it could ban child labor, it was also a ban on business. So once again, business or government didn't want to extend itself too far, didn't want to get too involved, especially with commerce between states or business between states. And then Mother Jones supported and helped organize strikes of children, so child workers, and her most famous one is March of the Children, and that was from Pennsylvania to New York, and this was designed to increase support for child labor laws and hopefully motivate the public to put pressure on government officials. All right, thank you for listening.